Oh, hey,
Oh
we're
no.
live. What's good, party people? And apparently, I have way too many intros to it preloaded, so I can't know which is which. But happy Hallows Eve, Samhain, Halloween. It's not Guy Sports Day. That's a different fucking day. But yeah, man, spooky shit. Uh, championships won. Interviews had. So, what's good, party people?
That's good. Do you really want to have this conversation?
Yes, well, I guess this is it. Well, that's the thing. What things identify as right in particular holidays? I think it's pretty apropos because we are talking cancel culture with BigFemVader, Ayesha Raymond. So, Ayesha, what's going on?
Where do we begin?
Where do we begin? Okay, so when did you first know of the euphemism now known as cancel culture?
For me, it was the infamous world burning, well, my world burning to the ground of the hashtag speaking out movement. That was
Okay.
my first inkling of it. Also, whether or not this gets me cancelled, one of my favorite comedians and one of my heroes in the world is Dave Chappelle, and he's now a victim of cancel culture. And
Mhm.
that has also been something that's been happening for a while now with most of his TV specials for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and it's a funny one because I grew up pretty. I was actually just telling a friend this 10 minutes ago, actually. No, not 10 minutes ago. I have no concept of time. Good God! But I was just telling a friend pretty recently that I grew up in San Francisco. The first parade that I went to was a what now is a pride parade, right? And I was just like, oh, I love rainbows, Rainbow Bright, reading Rainbow, whatever. These people get rainbows. This is fucking cool, man. Oh, and that dude dresses up, in a dress or might be a little bit more flamboyant and whatever. But I didn't think anything of it. But cancel culture, we're talking about the speaking out movement, and I mean, in certain circles where it happened, it needed to be said. Was there some hypocritical things that happened? Absolutely. But cancel culture, whether you call it cancel culture or not, has existed since the beginning of time, right? I mean, cancel culture, if you're, an American, right, or whatever the hell that means anymore, but then the first people who set foot in this land from afar, non-native, what did they do? They had I mean, even as recently as either the turn of the century or the mid 40s, they had I forgot what integration classes. That's not the name of it, but basically they were trying to strip away all of the native tongues and culture, what have you, and be submissive to one ideology. So cancel culture
I was going to say,
historically,
for some reason, the word cleansing comes to my mind, but I know it's not cleansing classes.
yeah, even that one is a loaded one. But that's the thing, right? And obviously, at a politically, socioeconomic strife things, like in terms of our evolution, I heard something to the effect of in the last 10 years, we've evolved as a species of humans far more than we did in the last 100 years.
Do you really think that's true?
Okay, so 100 years ago, they might have had electricity, might have, but it was a very rudimentary deal, right? So in in the last 10 years, which I could speak to, right now we have even more so than ever social media, which I mean, which is a big part of whether you call it the Occupy movement, the Tea Party here in the states. And then now this, like the speaking out movement, it's coming in. various different shades, but theoretically speaking, it is a way of using technology to kind of to be used as your soapbox for whatever you've thought and you feel, to connect with people that think or feel the same way, but also attack the people that feel differently.
But that's the thing about social media and the whole cancel aspect that annoys me. With me, when people think that it's an aspect of almost kind of connecting people, when it's actually a way of creating disconnects.
Hmm.
To an extent, the way that some mind states do go is if you are pulled up for something that happened 7, 8, 10 years ago. Like I am not the same person I was when I was a teenager. If I
Hmm.
was to tell you that, that would be a lie. It literally would be a lie. I am not that same person. You could find things. Don't go and find them. I will destroy you all. You could find things right now if you try. Do it, and I will hurt you. You could find things right now that would disregard everything and then completely put me on the other side of what will be called cancel culture. But then the whole point of me being a human being is to grow and change. If you don't allow me to grow and change as a person, then what is the point of even existing?
No, you're 100% right, and that's the, I guess, the double-edged sword, because in many ways it could be used as a trope to, you know, spearhead real change in society, right? When you think about like women's liberation, when you think about like obviously non-segregation, those are things, social cues. Even the thought of like social security, national health care, all of these things were brought up, unions, right, were brought up theoretically to be, even LGBTQ rights, right? These are all supposed to be inclusionary, but in recent years, and this is why I kind of subscribe to the last 10 years being a little bit more evolutionary than the last 100 years, right? Because these are the things that are used to kind of distance people from each other when they're supposed to include, right? I mean, look at how many, records that have been broken by, you know, people who identify were born as one sex and identify as the other, and then go on to basically wreak havoc in every record that a particular sex or gender identity, made and worked so hard to create.
Or at one point when you can have a certain vision or idea or ideology, and then suddenly 10 years later I have a completely different idea. Like in terms of the only thing that I can think of is my movie history and my entertainment likes and dislikes. I'm British. I quite enjoy the Carry On series. Now, if you watch it now, or anybody that enjoys that kind of taste now can be quote unquote questioned. Does that mean that I should be questioned for what I enjoy as entertainment? Should I be cancelled for what I enjoy as entertainment? Does that make me a bad person?
And that's the other thing, right? To basically go back, right, and take something somebody said, and obviously, I in every argument that not argument, but like discussion that I have, or if it's just my wife and I try to put context. Like, where were we as a people? What was going on? What was the music like? What was the innovations? The electronic innovations. What was the political scene? Because all of those things matter. You know, um, there was a time in this country, which was like what, well, now 50 years ago in the 70s, where the middle class really still existed, right? And I think that for here in the States, the most idyllic times where, you could work in an auto industry line putting cars together, right? And live in a decent area and have one income. Usually it was the male of the head of household that essentially went to work, and the wife, or the spouse, took care of the kids and what have you, or if they had no kids or whatever within. And I think that idealistic, as close to the American dream as we got, in my estimation, right? We're post segregation, Jim Crow. There's still, obviously, racism that still is apparent today, But like you could work a job and provide, have a house, a car, white picket fence, 2.1 kid and a dog,
The dog.
right? That was, and that's to me the American dream. The creation of wealth to the top 1% was a little bit, further. I mean, it wasn't further; it was closer in margin, right? So that, and we had it for maybe about 5 to 7 years, from like I would say late 60s into the early 70s. Once we get into the 80s, the auto industry goes belly up. They move all the factories to Mexico or different countries. I mean, there's even a Michael Keaton movie. I can't remember the name of it, where he's an auto industry exec and he goes to China. I mean, Japan. Japan. Why did I say China? He goes to Japan, and trying to acclimate himself. And that was, and even that, right? Right now you couldn't release that movie now, which was mild mannered for the time, but you couldn't do it. I mean, even like there was I think it's like Jack Nicholson in As Good as It Gets, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where like he hates Greg Kinnear's character because he's gay, right? Gay man living in the building. That was the only thing. He was gay, and then he's hitting on a younger woman as like a 7-year-old dude, and it's just like that movie could never be made today.
But there's so many. But that's what I don't understand. It's that thought process and that change of knowing that couldn't be made, which is why you should understand why it's not complete. Because you, at one point in time, you did find that quite entertaining. Most people did, or you watched it. Things like Austin Powers, you couldn't remake that today. Eddie Murphy's Delirious, Raw, definitely, you couldn't redo that today. There are many things that people still legitimately find. Hello.
Yeah. Paul Perez says Gung Ho, 1986, and Eric Frankenstein Whitaker says Gung Ho the movie. No, 100%. I mean, when you look at even like the thing that saved the movie industry here in the States, black exploitation, right? Because it spent so much money, basically doing those, Singing in the Rain, big budget, Cleopatra, Ben-Hur's, or whatever, that it almost bankrupted the industry as a whole when those movies were passe, right? And so they did low budget black exploitation movies and whatever, and that literally saved Hollywood, right? But we don't know about that in terms of historical context. Like you have to go pretty deep in the weeds just to find that information, right? So, but there's a ton of movies and shows. Like my dad was just like, no, you're not watching The Dukes of Hazzard. That has the stars and bars. Like that's like that's not, no, like don't. And like that's one of the reasons why I couldn't get into like Braun Strowman. I'm all like, that dude and his ancestors might have liked to see me in a tree, hanging.
What about Mr. American?
Oh, wait. I think I got something here. Yeah, this came in the mail the other day. Shout out to Littlefoot on Twitter. But it's fuck Hulkamania, racism running wild since 1984. Because him and Nick wanted to live like us, right? After Nick makes a vegetable out of a Marine, fucking horrible ass car crash, right? His life is never the same, and it's because Nick is in jail and wanting to, like commit suicide, and those are very touchy subject. But like his dad, Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, his only kind of way of uplifting his son is like, we're gonna be like rappers, we're gonna live like N-words. Yeah. And then when tasked about it, it's just like, everybody was saying it in my neighborhood, which is essentially the I'm not racist, I've got a black friend.
Was that the reason, or was it these aren't my thoughts? These are Hulk Hogan's thoughts. Terry Bollea doesn't think like me.
Oh yeah. How big is Terry Bollea's dick versus Hulk Hogan's dick? That came out, and even that, talk about cancel culture. That was, that was one of the benchmarks of like political and freedom discourse here in this country, because it was Gawker. Gawker is the one who basically published the fact that, he was sleeping with his friend. Hulk Hogan was sleeping with his friend's wife, and the friend offered up his wife to Hulk when Hulk was on the verge of suicide. It gets really fucking dark.
Oh.
My internet went out. Holy crap! I think I got canceled.
No, so
Yeah,
did mine.
yeah,
It was like,
100%.
it's God,
Paul
there's a-
Perez says, "Yep, Woods, you just got canceled." No, we were taking truth bombs, so I went to the phone. This is better, what have you. But
I think
and Paul Perez says Austin Powers was hilarious, but he could be canceled by today's standards, even though the comedy was addressing the beginnings of our cancel culture movement. No, I mean, didn't they have Fook Me and Fook You as characters?
they had that, but it's even the entire stereotype alone. The simple fact that you're aware that that stereotype exists, an English person with bad teeth who wears glasses, who walks around, is a little bit of a chav and wants to bang everything in sight. If you are aware that that stereotype exists, what does that say about you?
Yeah, I don't know, man. And it's funny because actually, I can't remember which person in that Austin Powers movie, that portrayed the "fook me, fook you" as Asian women and what have you. Um, but one was Carrie Ann Inaba, and up to that point, she had was a touring dancer with Madonna. She went on later to become one of the judges for Dancing with the Stars, the U.S. version, right? But again, context, right, where she could be portrayed as a judge on Dancing with the Stars, but just 10 years before, if that, fook me, fook you.
Um, uh, uh, you want to do names? Here we go. This is probably something that people don't know about me, but you can search on the internet today. When I was working in Europe, in France, my name was Amazon Blackie. That was my name. Yeah. And it was okay. It was fine. Yeah. Now, if that happened today, it'd be a very massive problem. But back then, it was completely fine.
No, 1,000%. And it's like you said, it's you got to put I feel context is lost in a lot of civil discourse, and I mean just to kind of echo the sentiment of like racial undertones and what have you. I last week went to a couple GCW shows, and then after night two, shout out to Game Changer Wrestling. But night two, hang out with Blake Troop and your Mae Young Classic compatriot Zeta Zang, right? And there was something Blake Troop had said to Zeta, and it was funny. And I was like, "Oh, just don't move. Let me capture this." And I took a picture, and then I posted it later on social media. And I said, hey, caption this. Because she was an Asian woman, I saw some of the most misogynistic, racist towards Asian comments. And I was just like, and but also this is from a world and an insight where like a Ric Flair would be celebrated, for what he's getting canceled for, during that plane ride from hell and a litany of other things, right? So, and again, it was like, it was 6 months before, everybody was like, he was in everybody's music video. Ric Flair was making bank when a lot of people were losing their bank accounts and, what have you. So, just how quickly, and I think that's a nice little snapshot in terms of, you know, hot today, in terms of like the council culture movement, that could be it. Now, obviously, context is key. Um, Not to disparage or victim shame the flight attendant that happened to, right? But then it was found out that her and either her significant other, right, basically did like extorted like $250,000, something like that, something in the six-figure range. They either extorted it or something or what have you. So it's not as peachy keen as one would think, right? And again, I think that gets lost in counterculture, where in MMA we've had two male to female transgender, right? Fight. One is Fallon Fox, and I can't remember the other's name, but she I'm not going to dead name. She fought in Combate Americas or Combate Global, I should say, um, and the female transgender woman, basically defeated a 0-1 fighter that hadn't fought in 7 years. Right? It was one of the worst fights. Not because she was transgender, whatever. It was just because they weren't to the upper echelon of what we now know as like MMA. You know, like just MMA, high class MMA, right? And the problem that I have with that, he's gonna go there, but Danny Courtney Sanders says up. So two guys. I'm not going to touch that, but if you say yeah, I don't have a dog in the hunt, right? But here's the deal. Fallon Fox, right? Fallon Fox, the first male to female transgender, caved in uh, Erica Newsom's head. Like the shots were so grandeur that they literally caved in her head. She had to have surgery, like like her skull reconstructed. It was fucked, right? Then Fallon Fox, the male to female transgender fighter, fights Ashley Evans Smith later on in her career, right? Which wasn't very long, right? And now Ashley Evans Smith is in the UFC or whatever. Well, Ashley Evans Smith on that night beats Fallon Fox. Fallon Fox subsequently retires, right? So I'm like, wait, and then now we have this transgender, this next, the second wave. I wouldn't even say wave, the second competitor, right? And guess what's happening, right? Like you got fed a 0-1 7. You hadn't fought in 7 years, person, you know, and it's just like, what are we doing, right? And I kind of think about even in 2010. I think it was the year my dad passed away, where Dana White was from the UFC was asked about Ronda, who was still in Strike Force, Ronda Rousey, about are we going to see women in the UFC? And he says, bro, that'll never happen. Right? Within the year, there's, there's Ronda's there, right? Then within 2 years, there's two divisions. Now, as we sit here in 2020, there are four divisions, right? So does the efforts of Fallon Fox and the other transgender fighter complement or negates the uprising of women's MMA or women in sport, of all sports, whether it be CrossFit, weightlifting, badminton, I don't know, and now obviously there's scientific deals about um yeah Daniel, it's like, bro, you're entering into super dangerous territory. This let's much disrespect. It should be me. You should be
My guess should be a
yeah.
meme of what? What?
That's yeah. That's yeah, man. Fun times. But yeah, so the thing
My
about it is like,
character picture
where
of
are
my
we? I think for me, it's just like, where are we going to be at the end of this? Like, what is the social change? Because we know when Jim Crow, there were and here in the state at the what is it? The Little Rock Four, I believe it was. But Ruby Bridges and I think there was only four kids in Little Rock, Arkansas, right? That basically went into a notoriously whites only school post segregation, right? And that it, that basically set the tone for what now we don't even look as integration, right? Now you just go to a school either on the marks of the teachers or whatever your geographic zip code or postal code is, right? But you have to have all of these social changes enacted to have that and for this to be the norm. I'm in a, you know, um, interracial marriage and relationship, right? But that couldn't happen without that. So with male to female transgenders, like what's it, Caitlyn Jenner, right? Caitlyn Jenner is trying to escape paparazzi, right? Killed a lady, like hit, run, whatever. Does he not get prosecuted? Does Caitlyn not get you know prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, right? As if you or I had done it, right? And because she's a transgender, or is it more because she's a celebrity or doing a past incarnation, was an Olympic hero? Do we negate all of that stuff? Or like Brandy, right? Brandy Norwood, the singer, right? And because she's a celebrity, she also, did it, killed a person by vehicle. It was an accident, obviously, but if you or I had done it, I mean, I think I just saw something today where somebody in like Compton was, got a vehicular manslaughter charge, and those charges did happen in the same county as like Brandy. It happened in the same county as Caitlyn Jenner and Brandy's vehicular manslaughter, but because this person was from Compton, they were like, "Oh, we're gonna throw the book at him."
But that's another aspect of the whole thing, the whole celebrity and putting somebody on a pedestal. And realistically, we're all human beings. I'm a human being just like everybody else, and I will also make mistakes. So I should be prosecuted and held to the same standards as everybody else. That's another layer that you want to peel back.
Yeah. So and that's kind of where I'm at, right? Because identify what you want to identify as, right? But there's certain sciences, there's certain things that have been in place. Now, obviously, for me personally, I have always been kind of anti-authority. Can I call her her? Is it she? In terms of Caitlyn Jenner, I'm not. I'm really not sure. I know in the in in reference to Caitlyn Jenner, I know she identifies as a female, um, but is also anti-LGBTQ, which is very odd. Has girlfriends, right? I mean, female, born female girlfriends. So, but doesn't consider herself as a lesbian. Like, it's wild. But also won like People's Woman of the Year or Person of the Year. So it's kind of wild. I don't know, and even with like with the what you identify as, right? how am I supposed to, like, I'm just saying me, right? Somebody who works a job, has a wife, raising kids, and doing the whole thing, and trying to keep a roof over my head, and then also, if you don't tell me what you identify as, I'm just supposed to know. If you have your nails done, jeans, black t-shirt, man or woman bun, right, and a unicorn ponytail,
Unicorn. Ponytail.
and I'm just supposed to know. And at least in with a map, right? You got like a topography. This is how high it is up from the sea level, and like this place might have mountainous ranges or whatever. There's a key of some sort, to kind of decipher.
There's something telling you. Yes.
There's no key to, like for me, I would love there to be transgender weightlifting, and like if we can, like everybody should be included, right? There should be transgender MMA, like a division. The UFC create a transgender division for male to female. I mean, but even the UFC has a problem where weight cutting in all of MMA is pretty ghastly, right? Where you sign up for a 135-pound fight, right? You cut weight, weigh in the day before your fight, but then you rehydrate and everything. And by the time you step in the cage, you're no longer 135 pounds. You're close to 145. So the 135-pound fight or championship is really at 145. So what are we doing, right? So, I mean, I kind of think, Rogan also thinks this way, was the fact that you should have a weight class every 10 pounds, right? Because the leap from 185 to 205 is pretty grandeur, right? It's fucking nuts, right? And then especially if you're fighting up or down a weight class, by the time you step into the cage, right? So in that aspect, I would also love to have either not a league. I would love, whether it be Bellator, Combate, UFC, to have a transgender division. If you're a male to female transgender, that is 125 pounds, you should fight at 125 pounds, and then there should be, a top 5, top 10, top whatever of fighters that way. I think that's where the inclusion happens, right? Not have a you know born male to female fighting a naturally born woman, right? And then you don't really get to see, because scientifically, endocrine systems are different. You can, and it's also kind of like the Chris Benoit deal, right? He had so much brain trauma that he had the brain activity of a 70-something-year-old Alzheimer's ridden female. It changed his gender. So now does that justify what Benoit does, because he's a female and he fought with his wife or whatever the fuck? I'm not even going to get that. Is a whole can of worms, and it's really dark and whatever. And I feel for all of the families that had to go through that horrible fucking tragedy, right? But like, where do we draw the line? Like, I mean, and it's not a line, but like, we have to get to a place where it's inclusionary, but with context, right? You can't just go, just because you identify as a particular gender, go into that gender, not really change too much of yourself, and break all the fucking records that the people born to that particular gender, basically did for fucking 30, 40, 50 years to try and do. It gets weird.
It's different because I'm wrestler point of view. It's completely a whole different kind of spectrum. But it's weird that you say it that way, because I feel bad with saying it this way. With my stance on that is, in my brain, everything's quite black and white. I don't like the fact of there being this kind of strange kind of grey area. So the inclusion of something that you say of a division isn't a segregation, it isn't disrespect, isn't being, taking somebody out and shining a negative light. It's generally just creating a division. So I don't see I don't see that a transgender division would be a bad thing. It's not. It's the same as the Paralympics. It's the same as dividing men and women, and we've done it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Like, it's not. It would just be a thing for highlighting that division, which will probably, like, even a thing as a woman, we now have the many other women's divisions. The women's evolution or revolution that's just happening is just highlighting women. That then neglects all men, so you don't look at them anymore. So you highlight this particular division. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. And then for me, like, I hate to get, like, beat a dead horse, right? But like the UFC, right? So the UFC is owned by like the biggest, talent agency in Hollywood, in William Morris Endeavor, WME Endeavor on the stock market, and what have you, right? The the headquarters for WME Endeavor is maybe about a mile and a half away on the same street from the heart of West Hollywood, right? And Amanda Nunes, who's arguably the most dominant female combat sports athlete of all time, right? Openly lesbian woman, married to a lesbian woman who is on the roster, right? They're, it's a couple that are on the roster of in the UFC. She's the most dominant champion in history, and I think Joe Rogan was talking about it, where like there should be big ass fucking posters all throughout West Hollywood of Amanda Nunes, right? But this is the same company where when Amanda faced Ronda, they were so ready to anoint, Ronda back to her throne, right? That were like, there's no way that Amanda Nunes is going to win because they just got name recognition. Ronda's a bigger name. She's more marketable and what have you than Amanda Nunes. And Amanda Nunes is fucking, it was like a damn punching bag. It was just like, was not good, right? But did Amanda Nunes get any of the limelight or notoriety that Ronda did? Now, of course, they're different people, right? But if everything is inclusive and it's all about equality, shouldn't you, you're openly lesbian champion, identified as a lesbian champion who happens to be the baddest woman, like a female Mike Tyson, right? Beat them all. First ballot Hall of Famers. She's basically handled with relative ease, right? And there's nothing for her in terms of movie roles or whatever. And it could be just her deal, but like when I was driving Uber right before the pandemic, I picked somebody up from Endeavor, right? And they listened to me talk, and they're like, "Are you an actor?" And blah, blah. And I'm like, "No, I'm a combat sports, interviewer." And they're like, "What's combat sports?" "Oh, we could be different things: pro wrestling, MMA, UFC." And they're like, "What's UFC?" This is somebody who works within the company that owns the UFC. That's a stone's throw away from, and that was, there's probably 20,000 other people. It's a big ass building. If you put it in the Google machine, you'll see like the Endeavor offices are huge, right? But that's one person out of 20,000 that maybe just work, or at least maybe 5 or 10,000 people that just work in those offices pre COVID, right? But that was my experience, and I was just like, ooh, that's weird and spooky language, and that person has to probably be a part of a team or a part of a team or what have you, that maybe some people have the similar kind of ideologies that they don't know, it might not be their division. The UFC might not be, their division and what have you. So I don't know. I don't know. But I feel like instead of and I don't want to see him like Jim Cornette-esque or what have you. I do love the fact that there's female wrestling in which you are a bastion of, right? And it exists, and it's very high level, and it's not. It is vogue to know that two female wrestlers can headline a card, or you can have an entire card of female wrestlers where 50 years before it, it was the dwarfs. They call it the M word, but I'm not going to get into that. But the dwarfs and the lady wrestlers. Now, the great Mildred Burke had to, there was no chance she was going to go ahead and headline a card, even though she was, I mean, the most notable, NWA champion, women's champion since Moolah, and that's a whole loaded thing. But she doesn't have the scandals that Moolah does, and trained a hell of a lot of even male wrestlers. Her insight was so intact. In MMA, if you, and I think it's in all of combat sports, whether it be boxing, Muay Thai, MMA, pro wrestling, right, jiu-jitsu. When you have a female fight on the card, chances are that's the one that people, when they go to their cars at the end of the night, that's the one that they're going to be talking about. Because even with all of the Ronda Rouseys and the, Trish Stratus's and all of the, China, all of this, right? Female combat sports is very much the way that, men's combat sports was maybe 30, 50 years ago. Some of it was lowbrow, but then some of it was, heralded, and society picked and choose, which again is cancel culture, right? Wrestling got canceled by society, especially here in the States, because a lot of people think boxing is, how they adapted, radio and announcing and, when we got to TV, how to shoot it. But boxing was actually considered lowbrow in this country, and it was wrestling that everybody almost unanimously loved, whether it be radio or TV form, right? And a lot of the same angles and aspects of the production, right, that you see in an NFL or a World League Soccer or what have you, NHL, NBA, all of the major corporations, organizations for sports came from filming and recording pro wrestling. But unfortunately, pro wrestling gets left in the ether once Vince McMahon says it's all a hoax. He breaks kayfabe.
It didn't happen.
I know.
Stop it.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's cancel culture. Cancel culture has always existed, but just like MMA, right? The terminology of MMA didn't exist until 2007. The year my son was born, my youngest son was born, right? It was either Vale Tudo, do you train UFC, bro? Like, because that was it, and UFC has a weird kind of history where it's UFC and Pride, right? In terms of like the first MMA, widely regarded MMA promotions. Now, of course, there's been backyard fights, unsanctioned fights, which is no different than wrestling, right? Wrestling took a part of the carnival circus. That's why we have kayfabe, the language of kayfabe, right? So it's not anything new. And again, that's what I say about context. Where people are like, oh, you're on your phone all the time. Well, I know there's a picture from like the 30s where everybody's heading home and all of the guys are in the newspaper. Right? So it's always happened. Right? And this is just a next evolution of it, right? I heard a lot of things like we're repealing change, right? We're eliminating the dollar, right? Well, you got to remember context, right? We used to trade in resources, right? Whether that be resources, trades and goods and services, what have you, that was it, right? Then it went to gold. And then we were like, gold, right? And then it got to be heavy to carry around 20 fucking shillings of gold, right? Actual gold pieces, not plated, you fucking Instagrammable rapper view. No, gold, actual fucking gold, right? And then we're like, oh, too fucking heavy to carry around, especially if you're a noble person, right? Affluent, maybe not, maybe a portly gentleman, right? So like, we're gonna do this. This paper says I owe you 10 shillings of gold, rather than me carrying around, getting robbed and shit like that. And that's how we get the fucking dollar, right? And the dollar was basically based on the gold trade. It represented it, this is $10 worth of gold or whatever the fuck, right? And then here in the States, like we were talking about Fort Knox, this place in Kentucky where they had all of the fucking gold, right? We don't get, we don't hear about it at all because at some point during the late 70s, early 80s, we went from gold being the gold standard, and I'm not talking about Shelton Benjamin, but shout out to Shelton Benjamin, but the gold standard, and it becomes one of credit, where we basically do business, and it's right back to that bartering system that civilization was fucking founded on. So that's the thing. Context is absolutely key, and I think a lot of the context is lost in what most considered cancel culture, right? You know, um, just like in the, if you support, like in AEW, um, why does, for me, why does Nyla Rose, a male to female transgendered woman, get to fight women, but Sunny Kiss fights men, and Sunny Kiss might be, at least to the untrained eye, a little bit more feminine than even one Nyla Rose, right? And then ideologically, right, Nyla Rose is the native beast, right? There's a strong native, presentation to her character and her genealogy, right? But also, you're a a male to female transgendered woman that calls yourself in persona a beast, which would give people to justify why, girls on reservations are being kidnapped, raped, and killed. I mean, one of them, like, and I'm not justifying any of that, right? But it's just, it's a miss. And then is Nyla Rose, in the context of great women's wrestlers, is she a great wrestler? For me, I don't see it. She's not a great wrestler. I can't remember her finisher. I can't remember a great match that she's had. But then I could say the same of, like, I'm sorry, but Rio. Like Rio, when we saw in the Attitude Era, like, if unfortunately Jackie and Ivory, who are two of the most legit, between the fucking ropes, females that they had on the roster, if they have to succumb to fucking bra and panties matches and gravy matches and whatever the fuck, right? And have misogynistic things chatted at them by Jerry Lawler, right, on commentary, right? But Nyla Rose is literally not a great wrestler, no matter what you identify as, But then again, like, fucking Warrior wasn't a great wrestler, but rose to the top of the card of it. Look, so that's why I say context. Context to me is important, right? You have to at least have a conception of the time period, because again, it was cool when everybody was saying "suck it" as kids, right? But those same motherfuckers are like, "save our children against pedophilia," which you should be 100%, right? That's not cool. But then also ask your grandma how old she was when she was married. Right? Everybody wants to save our children, but also listen to Ted Nugent and Elvis Presley. Elvis married Priscilla, at 14, and then Ted Nugent, cat strut fever and all that jazz and whatever, super hard in the paint, right wingy guy, which whatever, kudos to you, whatever you identify as, right? And we're talking about identification, but also one of his wives was underage, right? And I think she came from like an immigrant, maybe an Asian, first generation Asian, but I could be wrong. I could absolutely be wrong. But they weren't doing so well, right? And the parents, knew that she was going over to see Ted, right? So Ted gave them a proposition: either you sign off on the marriage, right, of your 14-year-old daughter, or you cannot. She'll see me anyway, and you guys will live in smaller, like you are now. Now, obviously, I'm paraphrasing it, but this is the same guy that was like, "Save our children." What are we doing? What are we doing? Again, context is key. The fact that you and I could even be on any type of media, right? Um, a lot of people were saying, like, I saw a post on Facebook about superstar Billy Graham and the guy that a lot of the top stars of the next decade stole their gimmick from, right? Like, and they mentioned like Scott Steiner or Hulk Hogan or Jesse Ventura, right? But I took it one step further, and I was like, again, historical context. Thunderbolt Patterson. There's a lot of people that are here nor there on Thunderbolt Patterson. But if you listen to a Thunderbolt Patterson promo, okay? Listen to a Thunderbolt Patterson promo, and then listen to a Dusty Rhodes promo. And not just the promo, but the mannerisms and the way that they work and move in the ring. Okay? So Thunderbolt Patterson gave birth to that jive talking, whatever, sassing, as close to like the hood as you could get for pro wrestling, right? The urban, entertainment, right? And he was basically, he got that gimmick stolen or used by Dusty Rhodes, Jimmy Boogie Woogie Man Valiant, superstar Billy Graham, Jesse Ventura, Hulk Hogan, Scott Steiner. So it came from Thunderbolt Patterson, right? Getting out of wrestling. Pat Boone made his career literally whitewashing black hits. So he would take Little Richard and Chuck Berry fucking tunes, that's Domino, and basically make it palatable for a particular audience, an Anglo audience.
Audible.
Elvis literally went down from Mississippi to go to the Chitlin circuit. I mean, from Memphis to go to Mississippi for the Chitlin circuit to see Little Richard, Fats Domino, Buddy got like a lot of the Chitlin circuit talent of the day, right? And he basically makes it bigger than anything. He's a rock star. But it would be called jungle music, animalistic music for people of our color. But it's the fucking same song, same swag. It's palatable to a new audience. Yeah. Cancel. It's all cancel culture. Everything that we have is cancel culture. It's nothing new, in my estimation. I could be wrong. I oftentimes are.
No,
but
you're not
I'm
wrong.
giving you things to support my theory.
No, but you're not wrong because like you said, everything that we have right now, like you said, and I will now be changed by your rhetoric. You can have the last 10 years of some kind of evolution for humankind. But you can say that what we have right now, what we have today, everything that we know from before is cancel culture because what we are supposed to do is change. But the problem is why should you now be prosecuted for that change? if you are acknowledging that things have changed and things have grown and things aren't as what they were before, oh, it was bad, shock horror, okay, move on. Why should people now be prosecuted for that? Does it make sense, dude?
Yeah, and it's just wild, man. Like, I believe in absolute, not absolute inclusion, but I believe in inclusion, right? And here's why. Again, going back to MMA, and I keep on going back to it because it's the most applicable scenario in my head, in my world, right? And I just went to the Lights Out Extreme Fighting 6, so it's fresh in my mind. But, you know, UFC, as we knew it, open weight classes, didn't matter the discipline, and like literally the only thing that you couldn't do was eye gouges, nut shots, and something else. There was a third. There was a third thing I can't remember for the life of me, right? But then, as we're starting to get into the legalization in the States and other countries, right? You adapted, right? And a lot of the things that, weight classes were introduced. Where in 1994, the first UFC, there were no weight classes, right? So one would argue that's a pro or con of like a step in the right direction. Because some people love those days of the early UFC. No weight classes, one night tournaments, and everything like that, right? They thought it was a little bit more exciting. The guy with one boxing glove, right, on to punch people, and one, regular hand just in case he had to grapple. Shout out to Art Jimerson, right? But, a lot of people kind of like didn't want to, they loved the freak show. And once it became a legitimate sport, they kind of abandoned it, right? But in that quest for legalization, we get shit like weight cutting, right? Which I believe in the quest for legalization of the UFC, they borrowed shit from boxing and amateur and Greco-Roman wrestling in terms of weight cuts, right? So they can be applicable to the state and athletic commissions, right? And again, one would argue that's a pro and a con towards the evolution of MMA, right? But then now you have guys and girls literally killing themselves to make weight, a weight that they're not even going to fight at once they step into the ring or a cage. That's how fucking weird it's at, right? So, I mean, do we have more? And even those guys that fought on the early UFC cards, unfortunately, it's kind of like wrestling, where they succumb to horrible drug addictions because of, the trauma that he put their bodies through during the early days, right? And at a time where there wasn't a lot of money being a cage fighter. I often say that if MMA as it exists now existed, or even if it existed in like 1994, right? Or that 1994 template of MMA, Vale Tudo, no holds barred, was in the 60s and 70s, you'd have seen guys like the Funks, right? Dory Jr. and Terry Funk. You would have seen, guys like fucking the Briscoe brothers, right? Jerry and Jack, right? Johnny Hodge would have been a MMA fighter. There's so many fucking people that would have been an MMA fighter if there was money in it. And it's nothing new. Nothing new, because Wahoo McDaniel left the NFL. Same thing with, what's his name? Fucking Ernie Ladd. Big Cat Ernie Ladd. These are guys that fucking left football for wrestling because they made more money wrestling than they did in football. But again, that got canceled because that, the big man during the steroid trial, shout out to Vice, because they just did a Dark Side of the Ring for the steroid trial, which still had questions that need to be answered. But it was that, Vince didn't want to pay the fucking New Jersey, I think it was the New Jersey or the Philadelphia, or not Philadelphia, yeah, Philadelphia athletic commission. So he was just like, no, it's all a ruse, and we're no different than Ringling Brothers, but now people forget the George Hackenschmidts, the Luthezes, the Ed Strangler Lewis, the June Byers, And I mean, Sweet Georgia Brown. And those are like shooters back in the day, wrestlers. But they get like what? I mean, they get canceled because now the presentation of wrestling, right? It's less of the pancration of Grecian times, right? Or the jiu-jitsu of modern times, catch wrestling of modern times. And now it's just pomp and circumstance, which is here nor there. But essentially, we've gotten cancel culture in terms of our wrestling patronage. Yes. Yeah, that's go
I,
for it.
I can't. I try to. Every time I try and say something, I have to think about it and slightly censor myself. Is that a bad thing to say? In my head, because I am under the impression that you're never the same person as you were 5 years ago. I give everybody else a 5 years change, and I don't understand the the goal of even the social media aspect of cancelling. I was always under the impression that the justice system will prevail. And if you take things to the justice system, things will happen. I don't understand completely, totally blasting somebody over social media, screaming everything that you could possibly do, throwing out any court case that you could possibly have. In all honesty, the most serious situations, if they're put on social media, 9 times out of 10, nothing happens. And that's literally what happens. The police see it as whistleblowing. They see it as you literally trying to create a spectacle. The greatest thing that you could possibly do is bring it to the justice system. The entire pitchfork and kind of almost mob mentality of cancelling someone over social media, over a public platform. Yes, okay, it's there for all eyes to see and people quote unquote know about it, but how much has it actually done? In 5 years, 3 years, maybe 2 years, or of what we've seen in recent times, a year's time, that person will literally turn off their social media, stay quiet for about 6 months, and then come back. So, what have you actually accomplished rather than actually ruining the environment around you? And almost kind of deeming yourself slightly untrustworthy because you're that person who's automatically going to pick up their phone and go, "Oh, I saw it yesterday. It's going to happen."
Yeah, I don't know. I have hope. I have hope that um, there won't be predatory, you know, uh, entities within the wrestling business, or if you're a female, like I want to get to a place where everybody's respected for their work rather than their gender or what have you. Like I said with Nyla Rose, like if she's a great wrestler, she's a great wrestler. I, like, but if she's not the greatest wrestler, I don't want the soapboxers to kind of go, oh, you're saying that because you're a transphobe or what have you, right? Like, I have the same conversation with my wife where she likes a particular faith-based music genre, right? And I go, it's not my jam. I think it's the shits, right? And she's like, and the kind of ideology is like, oh, you can't say that because this is sacred. It's talking about a particular deity, a particular god, right? I'm like, no, but I'm the son of a musician. It's a shit song, right? But I can't say that because it'll offend somebody else. And I mean, total disclosure, I grew up a Nichiren Buddhist, right? For those who don't know, I mean, the easiest way to explain it is Tina Turner. The second verse of What's Love Got to Do with It, the song, if I chant in the days, I read it someplace. That is in reference to her Buddhist practice. And my mom was a huge, like she idolized Tina Turner. Like that's, dressed like her and everything, right? Um, So I don't have those like social constructs of like I can't listen to this, I can't do this, I can't say this, I can't. I think that would be more pertaining to my race, right? Whether that be a half islander, like I'm not a good Fijian boy, or I'm a whitewashed black guy, you know. So those are things, and you can construe that as a way to cancel me or others who are like me that don't fit a particular social construct, or that might not, you know, look for a partner of the same race and what have you, and kind of cancel me from the conversation because you can use these particular aspects of my life and use it as a way to negate me. And I'm thinking for myself personally, I theoretically my black card is revoked, right? Because of the way that I speak, right? So isn't that a cancel?
Your black card has been revoked. What's happened to mine? Did it disintegrate and erupt into miles and pieces?
And this is just stuff that I've experienced, and I'm just the guy who holds the microphone for these intelligent, incredible, athletically astute, people in my community, right? I can only imagine somebody who actually sacrifices their body, their livelihood, their relationships with their family by going on the road and doing the thing. So I can only imagine what it must be for people within the industry, So and that's a lot of the reason why I do this, right? Is hopefully to create, like a safe place where you can expound philosophies, right? But also for people that don't know who a particular person is, and I find them interesting. Well, guess what? Just like I did with Ayesha over a year ago, I DM them, and you're like, "You're interesting. I want to do the podcast."
I am interested, aren't I?
You, it's you. No, but these are the, and it's. I think that's it. I would love to have that transgender fighter on, right? Whether it be Fallon Fox or the one who fought in Combate, to kind of, and it's not to poke holes or anything like that. Please educate me, right? Over the, I mean, 500 plus episodes within, and I'm not saying this to kind of put myself up, but 500 episodes plus within 20 months. And that's not including the guest spots that I did, or just this with Ayesha, right? Or Voodoo in the Woods, right? So I'm closing in on like 1,000 particular episodes, on any given podcast, right? And I'm sure I've had people super left wing, super right wing, super religious, not religious at all, you know, identify as one gender, or identify as another, or we'll do it later, right? Because that's the thing. That's the other thing about cancel culture. It's retroactive, right? So you might be, I might interview a particular person and they identify as a different gender altogether. So do I get canceled for having the interview with them as their former persona? How does that work?
I don't know. Ask Twitter. Twitter will tell you. Twitter has all the answers. Twitter will tell you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's literally my answer.
I hope for people. I hope for people. I really do. Because wait, I'm gonna do something real quick. Keep talking. I'm gonna do something real quick. You're gonna be full screen.
Once you can have a normal conversation with actual human beings rather than just have a conversation with your social media, I think that will, help you grow as a person. It really will.
Yes. And not to attack people for the
No, exactly. I'm not. I'm just saying this creates distance. If you can say what you write on here to somebody's face, and not this camera, because he's like 3,000 million miles away from me. So I can say whatever the hell I want, and he's not going to do a single thing. Even if I was right there. No, we're not going to do this right now. But
you're gonna punch me in the face. Is that what we're leading to? You're gonna powerbomb me?
In the brain. It's giving me slight insanity. No, my problem is once you can say what is on this screen in front of somebody, like a real human being, like breathes air, drinks water, and has food, shits for a living, then fine. You're completely uphold of your beliefs.
Yeah.
But until you can do that, everything that you write on this is just wasted oxygen. Imagine with what you could have done with that time that you spent. And the thing is about the social media outbursts that get me is, you know how the notes, when they're written on notes, and they're like these long, thought out, convoluted, spell checks, the punctuation, Grammarly got in there. They had their Grammarly subscription on point. It's the amount of time that you've put into that. You could have literally thought about this for about 3 more seconds and gone, nope.
It's funny you say that. Why do you think I got into podcasting? Because I was that motherfucker. Just fucking easily triggered. Fucking triggered. Oh, I was a fucking keyboard warrior. Which, shout out to the Keyboard Warriors MMA podcast. It's the reason why. Yeah, the reason why the According to Woods podcast, they were like, Woods, you should fucking podcast. And I was like, I don't edit, whatever. And they're like, StreamYard, fucking use StreamYard. And 500 episodes later, you can thank fucking the Keyboard Warriors MMA podcast. But I was absolutely a fucking keyboard warrior. I'd be like, I know there's like, and I mean, no total disclosure, right? Like, I try to be as center of the road as possible, but like, I was brought up pretty liberal, right? And I didn't think that there was anything different until I moved to a non-liberal Central California, like Bakersfield deal, and like I was living there when President Obama was elected. And yes, he's a president, just like President Biden is now, just like President Trump before. You can't take all of the fucking, regalia away just because you don't like the person that fills the seat. Like, you can't do that. Otherwise, nobody's a CEO, nobody's a, these gender roles of like male, female, husband, wife, wife and wife. Like, none of that. There should be no fucking marriages. There should be nothing. Like, you should be able to just work a job because you want to get the pizza and then fucking leave it and never do it again, right? Once you start peeling away these social constructs, right? And I know I'm very, it's a weird thing coming from somebody who identifies as anti-authority. I'm System of a Down, Rage Against the Machine, fucking Anthrax the band.
That is true, but your trade is in social awareness. If you're not surrounded by a community, then your entire being means nothing. You need
different.
Existence.
Yeah, you need different. You need different. If everybody was just clones of each other, how boring would life be?
Yeah, but that's the point. That's exactly what the point is. The entire cancel culture aspect to me, is creating clones that all think the same. And you can't have that in society. Everybody thinks the same. If everybody has the same ideology, you will never know right from wrong. You can't know right and wrong if you don't know right and wrong. If you never feel pain, ever, then you will never know what pain is. Mm-hmm. Everything is always pleasurable. So if you don't have difference, you can't have similarities. You don't actually know that things are similar unless you have a difference. See, yeah. That's how smart I am. See, I'm not just dumb.
No, you're absolutely brilliant, but you're also fucking opening up wounds because the Mary says, "Yep, amen, sister." Yeah, 100%. No, but the thing about it is like, also for me, finding out that I was different fucked me up for like the rest of my life. Right? Things that I'm still bound by. Like, I went to school thinking like everybody had a mom that told their dad, hey, if I married Anglo like my cousins, I'd live on the good side of town rather than
good house.
Yeah,
the white picket fence.
Yeah, 100%.
Nice, good head children.
Yeah,
good head.
Which I I do have, so I'm not mad at that. But then also, my dad's, telling me that, my mom, had me because her sister. It was like a pregnancy pact that my mom had with her sisters, and they were all going to get pregnant within the same year. And my mom just got to it before. I'm the oldest of that generation of like 1985 kids within my mom's side of the family, right? So, and then when I get to school and realize that, like their dads aren't saying like their moms only married them for their citizenship or whatever, and Mary says, Woods, no, you didn't. Good hair, which her, that's my wife for everybody that doesn't know. And as you can see, her hair is nice and shiny with our son Owen, whose hair is you, honey. You might have just canceled your fucking self. I'm gonna say, yes, love you. But also, I had the same hair as Owen until my dad said, "Oh, he's American. He should have American hair," and then cut my hair, and it never grew back the same since.
I would have no bad things have happened.
Which, funny enough, towards the end of his life, he looks like Frederick fucking Douglass, like because he believes that his hair was the antenna to the third eye and everything, and cutting it, and was absolutely diametrically opposed to me cutting my hair, and short of threatening my wife and I, going, "You better not cut that boy's hair." And I'm like, "Where the fuck was this when I was 2?" Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's to be fair. Like when I first wanted dreads ages ago, my nan told me it would make me look like a ruffian, and every female, mostly all the females in my family, barring my nan and my aunt, have dreads. But apparently, I look like a ruffian.
I don't know. You look like a ruffafarian.
A ruffafarian.
Yeah, ruffafarian. I think it looks great. I think it looks great. And also the fact that in a world where a lot of people, and that's kind of, the inclusionary thing, to be comfortable in your own skin. I know my mom didn't teach, nor my sister or I, Fijian, because she didn't want us to go through the same things she went through, being odd, to 1983 San Francisco. She was just a black person with a British accent. And she might as well have been an alien. And that was liberal San Francisco. And she got accosted and spat on by her employers and, maybe even beat, maybe even put in a closet because she was a babysitter for a pretty affluent family's kids, and you couldn't go up against them because they've got judges and whatever in their pocket. And it's not to say that my mom had rights in this country any damn way, right? So she got with an black American guy who was my father, right? Who was in the war, right? In Vietnam, stationed in Korea, spoke a bit of Korean, right? South Korean, and, had my sister and I and everything like that. But she wanted us to be as American as you could. But then also gave me like, what is it? Bryant Gumbel as a template. Carlton Banks. Not Will.
No, Carlton. Has to be Carlton. Because Carlton went to school, Carlton had the education, Carlton was going to have a career. They didn't know what was going to happen to Will.
Yeah, but that's the catch-22 because my dad didn't want me watching the Cosby Show because that wasn't an accurate representation of what was going on in Black America during the 80s. Because, the crack, you want to talk about epidemics? The crack epidemic hit the hood, right? And it's kind of weird, right? Because that didn't happen in the 1950s, at least not to my knowledge, right? I'm not saying like no black or Latino or whatever didn't use crack before 1970 some odd, or in 1980 some odd, but it's kind of crazy, right? Everybody was just kind of straight and narrow, whatever. Jim Crow gets abolished. There's inclusion, right? White flight happens, and I'm not saying this is an actual, socio-economic deal that should be taught, but it gets under the rug swept. But when inclusion happens and the cities, big cities, become integrated, well, the Anglo folk or affluent folk that didn't want the inclusion, they basically went to the suburbs. It created the suburbs, went out of town, right? And it's, to me, it's funny as all shit. And this is just my personal kind of take on it, right? But white flight happens, right? And people leave the city, go to the suburbs, right? And they become business people within that suburb, housing authority, all of that stuff, right? And then they have kids. Their kids might go off to school in the city, different state, different country, whatever, but they come back home to essentially, take up the family business. And whether that be a business, whether they, you're a cop, you're a firefighter, so your dad's a firefighter, you're a firefighter, your kid is probably going to be a firefighter, right? Or a police person, or a doctor, right? Then we get to the third generation, right? The grandchildren of the people who left the city for white flight. Well, these people in the suburbs are listening to the hip hop music.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be about the culture, right? And then find out. And then they're like, holy shit, I could get a spot in Compton, Inglewood, Watts for like $300,000 than what it is to the suburbs. And I love the culture anyway. Fuck it. I'm going to move my family there. So, and that now is considered gentrification. So theoretically, in my estimation, literally gentrification is the theoretical grandchild of white flight.
Grandchild. The grandchild.
The grandchild. Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
Is it not though?
When you put it like that, it's made me think about it, but it's the fact that you said the grandchild.
It is. Okay. Oh, let me do it back. Gentrification's theoretical grandparents is white flight. So I just turned it around.
That sounds good.
So that's why you get your patchouli with, your patchouli smelling, non-binary coffee shop barista who's giving you kombucha on the tap, right? Named Tad. And Tad comes from the suburbs, regardless of what Tad identifies as. That's how we got here. But context is key, because Tad doesn't have the context of affluency that his grandfather or grandmother had. Yeah, yep. This is my husband. No.
You can
Sorry,
have
honey.
it back soon. Don't worry, it's fine.
Yeah. So that's it. I got wild ideas, but cancel culture, whatever. But also, like, I have a justification for not liking Hulk Hogan. I've never liked Hulk Hogan. Not never liked Hogan, but when I found out the fucking shit behind WrestleMania 9 and how he was supposed to, like how he fucking shoehorned himself in with fucked up ass eye and all, because him and Rude Eye Beefcake were going parasailing or whatever the fuck in Florida and get fucking hit and whatever. But yeah, like I thought he was the shits then. Yeah, and now I can openly say he's the shits and not be looked at like a leper.
Wait 5 years.
Why? What, you think people are going to be nostalgic against Hulk Hogan?
It's a circle. It always happens. Wait 5 years.
Don't you do perfect circle references here,
Just wait 5 years. Not only is it wrestling, but it's what happens. Just wait 5 years. Just wait. They'll come out with a new comic book, app, or game, and then he'll be your hero again.
He's never. Oh, Graham Farrell says, "Hey, you two. Hey, Graham. Shout out to you, Graham, and your awesome ICW fucking beanie. But no, but that's the thing. I don't know where the fuck we're gonna go from here. Honest to goodness, but we've never had this before. Here in this country, people, again, social constructs, right? People are pro-military, pro-police, but also pro-Second Amendment. In the Second Amendment, for those who aren't inclined, is the right to bear arms. And I'm not talking about skinning a bear and wearing its arms. No, I'm talking about owning a gun. Yeah, bear arms. Yes, yes. So the right to bear arms, right? But the reason why that existed, context, right? The context of it is because the forefathers of this country were scared that the natives and or the British were going to be taking their shit back, and those forefathers were scared as shit. So and we're like, we don't have a fucking army or a tribe, so let's just give guns to the citizens because there is no military, no police, right? But now that there's police and military, and you still want to own a gun, the fuck? Which, if you want to own a gun, I don't care. Like, whatever, you know? I will never be a patriot in this fucking country, for sure, you know? But it's weird, right? How organized crime, right? In the Constitution, right? It repealed alcohol, right? And then it gave birth to fucking organized crime, right? So they took that some bitch back out. But the mobs of Chicago and New York were already there with their fucking bathtub gin and speakeasies. And where do we want to go post-pandemic? We're going to knock 3 times and say the secret password to a fucking speakeasy. The fuck?
Post-pandemic, that was going on during lockdown. What are you talking about?
Okay, it's the same. I don't know where we're like. I really don't know where the fuck we're going, and especially like I kind of saw the hypocrisy, right? Like the Occupy movement, right? Oh, corporate fascism. We're gonna fucking take down the man from our iPods and iPhones and social media. Right?
From my computer screen. Just give me a second. Let me log on.
Yeah, 100%. Or like the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. Like we don't like. How dare he fucking desecrate the flag and kneel and whatever the fuck. But like you during said football game, you're eating nachos, right? Maybe not being preferential to people of Latin descent, but you're eating nachos, right? Sitting on your ass. Okay, but then you get on that guy for whatever. Like, fuck Colin Kaepernick while you're wearing a Muhammad Ali shirt. Okay? I don't know. I don't fucking know. So he says, hello, Ayesha. And Woods. It's
yes.
all.
You have to put the no.
Yeah. She should have put ... Woods. No, man. Well, okay. In a perfect world, right? You talked about perfect circles. In a perfect world, after all of this hoopla and what have you, what all the fucking confetti has fallen and everybody's supposed to be accepted. Where do you see us going with it? And especially this is coming right on the heels of things like automation, where lower wage jobs are getting replaced by fucking robots. It's the Dusty Rhodes Hard Times fucking promo 30 years removed, 40 years removed, right? So where do you want to see us as a society go from here? You could go region where you are in your neck of the woods, or you can just be global. However way you want to answer it, go ahead.
Honestly, myself, I would just like to see us as a society go back to using social media what it was meant to be used for in the first place. It was unnecessary advertisement. It was unnecessary like thoughts. It was unnecessary things, but it wasn't used to attack people. It wasn't used as a weapon because you're at a distance, or there's something behind you, or there realistically is no repercussions because you can delete that account. Where I want to see a society where we generally have human interaction. I know it's extremely hard right now after the pandemic and after everything else, where instead of actually voicing your opinion by voice only, it is voice in action. What, like, I'm not saying go back to the days of protests. I'm not saying march in the streets and, burn Frankenstein on a cross, but at least have words with action and not only words, because you can bark as much as you like, but it won't do anything unless you have action behind it. Realistically. Again, my opinion.
Yes.
DM open.
Yo, I I just want to get to this visualization of burning Frankenstein on the cross.
No!
What the fuck?
People have horrible, horrible things in their minds. The zombie of Mad Janet Murphy apparently wants to see Frankenstein burn on the cross.
Oh my god. That's the best. I mean, not that anybody cares, but for where I want to be, I want inclusion, right? But inclusion with, I guess, an infrastructure, right? And so, if transgenders want to get into pro wrestling and MMA, right? Now, the community that love either their community of transgender athletes, right, should support not just transgender athletes, but all of the athletes, because you have love for the art of the sport, right? And if you do, then it shouldn't matter what this person identify as. Hell, I don't like to be identified as if somebody told me you're a cis male. I was like, cis sounds too much like either sister or cis, like you get CYST, with cancerous and whatever, And
That's what your brain went to?
yeah, that's I don't know why. Like I said, I'm a straight male, and somebody said what a straight male is in the LGBTQ community, and I was like, "Whoa, I'm not that." And they're like, "Yeah, you're a cis," and I was like, yeah." And Ayesha's opinion had me nodding like a bobblehead. So there you go. Love it, Graham. Love it, Graham. Mine will probably do less. It'll be more like the Habib figurine that I have, rather than a bobblehead, because I'm probably going to say some stupid ass shit. But no, I really, I want everybody to be included, right? I want a male division, a female division, right? A transgender female to male division, a male to female, division. Um, the what is it? What do you call it? The fucking non-binary division, whatever the fuck, But I know it's an uphill climb when, like in MMA, you can't even get a weight in a division in every 10 pounds. Not money, but weight and whatever. So I know it's an uphill climb. It has always been an uphill climb, and there's no such thing as like make a particular place great or whatever, because it was never great. Like what's great for you, it's the eye of the beholder type scenario, right? What's great to you could be the absolute like hellacious circumstances to another person. Like I loved it when women sat at home and cooked dinner and made babies. But what does that do to the woman who wants to go work when she sees you have a bad day at work, or just wants something for her own fucking self beyond just some, a caretaker to go out into the workforce, right? I loved it when people knew their place. What are we talking about? Segregation? Where I had to call you massa or sir or couldn't look you directly in the eye? Again, that whole, the right to bear arms. My mom's from Fiji. The only people that fucking have guns in Fiji are the military. Not even the fucking police have guns. Okay? Of course, it's a little island, right? Context is key. But the thing about it is, You go there, and if you look suspicious, it's guilty until proven innocent. Versus here in the States, where it's innocent until proven guilty. So if you look like you're going to do something, so go ahead and fucking sag your pants. Go ahead and tattoo your face and not be a member of a fucking tribe, right? Go ahead. Say horrible things to people. Kind of like that social media scenario that you post, right? And the police will come and they'll find you, right? And the funny thing about it is, it's not the most, it's probably one of the most demoralizing experiences that you can get. Because I'll give you a scenario. When Cops, the show, came to Fiji, right? This guy stole a loaf of bread, thinking he was gonna be Cops-esque and shit like that, right? And he got in his beach cruiser bike with the fucking loaf of bread, and he fucking went down the damn street. At the end of the fucking street were two row Fijian police guards, right? Uh, they had 2-pound wooden clubs, not hollow, solid wooden clubs. And they knew that was the guy because he had the fucking loaf of bread under his arm with the fucking beach cruiser. And they beat that dude off of his bike. Beat him off of his bike. Like, almost turned the dude into a vegetable. Now, is that right? Right? I mean, the people that are about to save the children. I mean, there's a video on YouTube where this guy who was accused of molesting young girls in a particular, I don't know if it was a town or a village. So the fucking village went after him. The police came, they got after him, stripped him, beat him, and what have you. That's very, and in the comments, I heard what I've probably always heard, being half black, half Fijian, right? They're savages. They're savages. What kind of candor do they have? There's, illiterate, like, all these fucking shits. But also we'll post pictures of, I'm in Fiji. Oh, it's a dream. I'm in Mexico. I can't believe I'm here. But you're on the fucking resort rather than actually being with the fucking people. And it's not any particular race. It's usually a socioeconomic thing. The people that can afford vacations. I often think that Beverly Hills is probably the least racist place, least sexist place, less inclusionary place as possible, because it doesn't matter if you're gay, straight, transgender, or whatever the fuck. You go, you have money, and that's it. They don't give a shit. As long as you can fucking charge it on your fucking card, you're good. And it clears, you're good. Right? And it doesn't matter what you identify as. Right? But then if you're the lower, if you put that card and it says declined, you might as well be a fucking leopard. So in that instance, race, gender identification doesn't matter, but is it socioeconomically fair and balanced? No. But you can't have it all. What is it? Rolling Stones, you can't always get what you want? Or is it the Beatles? Can't always get what you want? I can't remember. But yeah, it's that. So I think we're going to get to a point where it's just like we're going to continue to go wherever the fuck, right? But there's never going to be a perfect thing. There are going to be times that you feel ideal, like your last night for you, winning a championship post-COVID, and yes, right? Those are ideal. Now, does that mean that you're not facing racial or sexual orientation discrimination as you go about your life, as you go about the indie scene? Right? Reasons why you might, with all your talents and all your experience, you're not in particular promotions. that doesn't negate all of those things. But this one moment of glory, it's fucking worth it at that moment. And that's it. Yeah. So counterculture. And Christina Mangesser is going to cancel me because
I
Adam
know,
Woods,
right?
where
Let me down.
is your Halloween costume? I'm going to go as podcaster. This is my costume.
Oh, it's like Christina Ricci when she was Wednesday. I'm a serial killer. They look like just like everyone else. Adam's family.
Yeah, but no, Christina Ricci dressed up as Wednesday?
When Wednesday's asked what is her Halloween costume.
Oh, yes.
I'm
a serial killer. Yeah. I must feel like I need that now. Christina Ricci posts a picture of her as Wednesday, grown up. I think like 1 year, like all of whoever's still alive that didn't get like coked out and suicidal or overdosed and whatever, like all those people, like what's her face, Christina Applegate dresses up like the gal from Married with Children, like they all just do it, like that's one of the things that just
like the girl from Clueless, Cher from Clueless. That'd be nice.
Oh yeah, don't get Stacey Dash. Fuck that, man. She's weird. Even her cousin, her first cousin, Damon Dash, right, is just like, what the fuck is that? He's like, I went to jail. He's like, I went to jail and I came back and what? Like that's my cousin? What the fuck? And Graham says, he's dressed up as a hobo. It wasn't difficult to do. I just put on my normal clothes. Shout out.
I'm going to say no comment, so I save you.
You know what? That actually reminds me, speaking of like Halloween costumes, there was a particular year where people were dressing up, and still to this day will dress up like Napoleon Dynamite from the movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's hilarious because I believe, this is what I believe, my friend Martin Starr, who actually, was raised in Buddhism, much like mine, he, if you've seen Martin Starr's work, right, whether that be, Ayesha, that's harsh in terms of your hobo assessment. Ooh, 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 there's heat. But Martin Starr, right? One would argue, if you've seen his work, whether that be on the show Silicon Valley, whether that be in a ton of Judd Apatow movies, as well as Freaks and Geeks, right? Martin Starr and Napoleon Dynamite are almost the same person. And then the parts that Martin plays, if you see Martin Starr outside of film, and at the time I knew him, he was just past Freaks and Geeks, a couple years removed, right? But not, he hadn't been the guy who farts in each other's eyes in Knocked Up, right? Or the guy that, has the kids dance in Superbad, right? At the party, right? He hadn't get there. He was still in between, like, do I want to act anymore, whatever. His dad was a director. Is a director. His mom is a soap opera actress and what have you. And he was just like, do I do my own thing? Do I follow the family business and what have you, right? But Martin Starr, his roles and Napoleon Dynamite are the same. So you can make an argument. Is he a horrible actor because he doesn't have layers to him, right? Or is he the most brilliant actor ever that he could just be fundamentally himself, no matter what the fucking role it is, and he succeeds?
Yeah, but is that acting if you're just being yourself?
Is it? Because, but then in certain situations, if you can play yourself dramatic, if you can play yourself upbeat, up-tempo, tragic, what have you, and it's yourself, and you got that. And think of all of the things that got left on a cutting room floor, right? Or, writers' rooms will fucking chop like fucking Ginsu knives or Benihana fucking dinners, right? And your essence remains intact. Whether it's, whether it's fucking Freaks and Geeks, whether it's Party Down, whether it's Judd Apatow films, whether it's Silicon Valley. Like you go from the world of Judd Apatow, right, and his movies, and you go to fucking Silicon Valley, which is Mike Judge from Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill and Office Space, and you're playing essentially the same fucking character. So does it make it great? Does it make it not great? And again, it's subjective. It's totally fucking subjective. You can answer however way you want, but that's it. And I hope we have a little bit more context going forward. As a society, we just have context because in generations before, the context has always been lost when we look back in the rear view. So I just hope we have context.
In Woods' world, context is key. You've heard it.
Yeah, man. So, Ayesha, for people to get more context of you and everything you're doing to follow your conquest of goals.
My conquest.
Oh, wait, let's see the hardware. Let's do this.
It's so heavy.
Oh my gosh, there you go. Humble braggy.
There we go.
And which championships are those? Which championships?
Two of them. See?
Yeah, but what promotions are you champions of?
We have we introduced her before, but this is the UPW Women's Championship.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be defending against Zell Shaw in January in the main events of the UPW anniversary show. You guys can check that out. And we have the newly addition to the family. I haven't named her yet. So we have the SWE Empress Division Championship, where I am the first ever holder of this title.
Wow.
First ever Scottish Championship. First ever holder of this title. First ever black holder of this title. First ever entity to hold this belt. So I just like to rub that in the camera.
Not too shabby. I have a belt here of my own, and apparently I thought it was coming from Evansville, Indiana, but it took 2 weeks to get here from Pakistan. Came DHL, which there aren't a lot of DHLs here, and it's not even historically accurate, but this is the Luthez NWA title.
That's so pretty.
Yes, and it's a lot different than titles today, but also I was talking to Panther, a pro wrestler formerly of the Eastern Seaboard here, but now resides in Florida. But he said the Fest belt was actually a bit smaller in terms of the main plate. There are pictures of Lou that has the belts, and he's holding the main plate in the palm of his hand. So
yeah, old school belts, the plates were like really condensed. You could see the fabric, you could see the actual belt because they were just plates.
Yeah. So, and then it's got a little, the cheap gems or whatever. But I thought it might be cool to take it to a jeweler and just bring this some bitch out. I don't know. That's when AMC goes to the moon, along with Shiba Inu. So shout out to Shiba Inu and AMC. There's that. But yeah. Oh yeah. Where can people find you to see you? Again, take more fucking gold from other promotions as well as
belts.
Yes, the collector of belts. Where can people find you as you do such things?
You can type in that magical acronym thingy down there. It's at BigFemVader into every social media platform you can possibly think of. Yes, I have 2 belts and hopefully more. Give me all the gold.
All right, Britney Spears, give me more, give me more.
I might make it my entrance music. It might work.
I love it.
It might work. Or at Fierce Females Wrestling or Fierce Females Glasgow. You can type in SWE online to see everything that's going to be happening with the Empress Division. Not only that, but UPW Plus as well, of their on-demand service where you can actually see the amazing matches between myself and Chantel Jordan and myself and Sky Smithson for this wonderful, beautiful belt.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Man, you're blazing a trail, and that yeah. Well, so if you're theoretically speaking, if you're the Empress champion tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
with that, and you plan to be, right? You don't. There's not a booking tonight, right?
No, tonight's Halloween. This is my day off.
Okay.
Um,
So then, theoretically speaking, you are the true Empress of Tomorrow.
I have the Empress. Oh.
Randy Orton pose.
Oh.
There you go.
I can't. My shoulders don't flex that way anymore.
Oh,
It's
the
sad.
sacrifice. That's why you guys should follow her. The sacrifices that she's making, and other gals and guys that are on the scene. Support indie wrestling. Support regional MMA. Support amateur MMA. Support everything. And don't just do it because you like the person. Hell, support the fucking president. Support whatever. They're not going to do everything that you don't. Or don't support them at all. But if you don't support them and they're not my president, they're not my prime minister, then what are you really fucking saying? Are you saying this fucking weird shit that worked when we had 13 colonies and not the internet or electricity worked, right? But now we've got gazillion people and the internet, the shit might not work anymore. So that's what I think about when they're like, he's not my president, blah, 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 he's not my prime minister. You can't, just because your person doesn't win, that's just like, I don't like football because my team lost. That shit's going to happen, folks. Sorry, it's going to happen. Do you stop liking the team? Do you stop, supporting the sport or whatever the fuck? I don't know. So support whatever the fuck you want to support and do it. Again, you support everything. You can not like things. It's just like your fucking family members. You love them from afar. But if you got, you might want to punch them in the fucking face if they're there, which is, again, social media. So, but if you want to follow me on social media, Gordon Woods, where when I'm not doing podcasting, other people getting dumped on their fucking heads. And again, context, if that ever happened to me, I'd cry like a little business. 10 points. But she's Ayesha Raymond. Go follow her. Subscribe to everything she's doing with your emails. Go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to Gordon Woods if you choose to. Because again, it's all choice. Consent is always sexy. But if you're going to, go ahead and do it. But if you don't believe me, Ayesha, which she's absolutely subscribed, let's talk to her other Mae Young classic compatriot, Zeta Zhang.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make sure you subscribe to According to Woods YouTube.